The first Mission Impossible movie feels like a genuine spy thriller and successfully restarted what would become a billion-dollar film franchise. The first film sets itself apart from those that follow and succeeds where many of the others fail. Comment down below what you thought of the first Mission Impossible movie. I'm your host, Brennan Sem. Joining me this week is my father, Tory Sem. Make sure to like and subscribe down below for more nerd content and commentary. Now let's roll the intro. Impossible movie was released in 1996, and in it, an American agent under false suspicion of disloyalty must discover and expose the real spy without the help of his organization. The film is directed by Brian De Palma and written by David Koepp, Steven Zaillian, and Robert Towne. It stars Tom Cruise, John Voight, and Emmanuelle Béart.
Bless you.
Does that sound right?
I think so.
It looks right to me.
It's very French, I'm sure.
Yes, and so as always, we're going to begin with a brief non-spoiler review. Dad, what do you think of the first Mission Impossible movie?
Well, of course, as I often say, maybe I'm starting to repeat myself when it comes to these my fathers before me.
We should just put that in the description.
We
just repeat ourselves.
Yeah, my father before me's. I don't know.
Well, I think that's right because you're just the one father.
Yeah.
I'm not an English major.
Well, like I say, it's obviously got a place. Certainly for me, because when it comes to Mission Impossible, growing up, I knew Mission Impossible, the show, right? I even knew that Leonard Nimoy was on it, right?
Really?
Yeah. So I knew the existence of the show. I doubt it was one that I watched. I when I was a kid, I remember the A-Team and stuff. That was more of an 80s thing. I think the Mission Impossible show, I'm thinking that was more a was it 70s? Yeah, 70s thing. So that's before my time. So if I saw it at all, it was in some sort of rerun that Dad had on or something like that. So not knowing.
Oh, Sam Elliott. Sorry.
Yeah, no. I mean, Peter Graves, of course, our titular character there, but the classic show I knew about, and the theme song I even knew before Mission Impossible, so I mean, it's kind of like a lot of this stuff, from Family Guy, right? I would say that Mission Impossible is just one of them things that I knew because it was a thing, not because I ever saw it or anything like that. So when Tom Cruise is coming out with the movie, it was worth a watch, and I enjoyed it. It's definitely comparing it to the recent ones, which we probably will in spoilers.
Sure.
But it's definitely a different ball of wax. But at the time, it was quite the movie. So I enjoyed it.
I would agree with that. So I come into this with like a weird sort of history, right? Because I didn't see any of the first three whatsoever. I know that at some point, back when we were this is inside baseball, in the house on Arizona, I had tried to watch the first one, but just could not get into it. And then I remember when Ghost Protocol came out, we went to go see it in theaters. I could be wrong, but for some reason, I think it was like a Brady suggestion. Like he really wanted to go see it. But we saw that in theaters. I think I saw 4, 5, and 6. Did not care. Did not like him at all. So when 7 came out, I couldn't care at all. And then when the 8th one was just released sometime in May.
Yeah, that was just a few weeks ago, right?
A few weeks ago at the time of this recording.
That's right.
I had to go back and I rewatched 7 because it's a 2-parter. And I will admit those 7 and 8 did get me interested in this franchise. And so I was a little bit excited to go back to see this one. I didn't honestly have that high hopes, but I really enjoyed it. And I think the reason that I enjoyed this first one, and I think the reason I'm probably not going to like some of the next ones, is like you mentioned, this one is so tonally different.
Right.
This is the only one of the whole franchise to me that feels like an actual spy movie. Right. And it's one of the few spy movies that feels like a spy movie. Like I've said this about, not on the podcast, but I've said this about like Daniel Craig's 007 or James Bond's. They don't feel like spy movies. They're just action movies where the lead is a spy. Right. But this sort of leans into some of those spy tropes, and I really, really enjoyed that.
Yeah, yeah. And it's got a lot of the, your Dad used to always say that spy movies are great until you get to the ones where everybody's backstabbing everyone else. Right. Everybody, those are the ones that are kind of wonky. And this one kind of does that, but I mean, it doesn't go too nuts. Right. Mm-hmm. So when we are working with these movies, I think that they are, this first one specifically, I think it was, kind of a love letter to the show in that way, right? And they were trying to do that. And in fact, we'll talk about it a little bit, but they wanted the original cast. They wanted the cast from the show in there. And
how old would they have been?
Yeah, we can discuss why they didn't do that when we get into spoilers, because obviously it's a major point right off the bat. But they wanted to bring in the original cast. They wanted it to be a Mission Impossible show turned into a movie.
Right, kind of like Star Trek.
Yeah.
I think Peter Graves was born in 1928. He would have been 70.
He could have. I mean, yeah. But so let's see. He was. We just saw him in Airplane. That was.
Leslie Nielsen.
No, Peter Graves. Peter Graves was in. Wasn't he? He was Captain Under. Yes.
Really?
Do you like gladiator movies? Yeah, that was Peter Graves.
That's so funny. I don't remember that at all. Wow, that's really surprising to me. Yeah, I'm definitely glad. Okay, so I'm not necessarily a huge Tom Cruise fan. He's fine for what he does. But I'm definitely glad. Oh, yeah, it says it right there. I could have just looked a little bit higher. He's good in this movie, and we'll obviously get into it more in the spoiler section, but I do think he performs pretty well here.
It definitely, and I think that I think that it actually is if I remember right, and I can't remember if it's his first ones or subsequent ones, it is the Tom Cruise production company that's doing this, so he's at the helm of all of these, right?
Yeah, it is produced by him.
And I think that he's doing a good job with it. Obviously they keep coming back. That could be, obviously it's because they make money, but also
sure.
I think that it's Tom Cruise is one of them guys, he's, say what you want about some of his wackadoodness, but when it comes down to it, when he likes something, he likes something.
Oh yeah.
And it seems like he takes care of it. And I think that's what this is. This is his thing. I mean, we talk and I think we talk about it more in it becomes a comparison more in future movies. But I remember hearing an interview, or maybe it's just some theory, but somebody said, Tom Cruise wanted to be in a Marvel movie. He wanted to be a superhero.
I had heard that too. I had heard specifically Spider-Man.
Right. And it wasn't working out. He wasn't getting in on anything. So that's why these movies really came about and really became action movies, because that's what he wanted to do. Mm-hmm. And we'll get to the second one next time and discuss that. But I think that the first one is definitely a good kickoff to it. Mm-hmm. And there's things you see throughout, I mean, we're not talking spoilers. Everybody knows the scene where he's dangling, right? That theme, there's always some kind of thing that plays out, some kind of a heist or some kind of thing in every movie that I think works out good. And you could maybe look at it and say, oh, they're just doing the same thing over again. But I think that the way they elevate it or the way it works good. And I think that this being the first one we see is an excellent way to kick it off.
I definitely agree. In the intro, I said that, this film successfully started what would become $1 billion franchise. And it definitely starts it out strong. Like you mentioned, some of the other ones afterwards don't quite hold up. But I would say that this one, I can't recommend. It's a good watch. It's definitely a good watch.
Right.
It's more to me than just a popcorn flick. Some of the ways we've described some of the other movies we've reviewed, or My Father Before Me's, or whatever.
Right. Well, and you're talking Brian De Palma. I mean, obviously, Untouchables. I don't know if you've seen that one, but we've got to watch that one sometime and talk about it.
I know that I've seen.
I brought it up. I brought it up a few times before, but when I think of Brian De Palma, I really, I think Untouchables. Some of these other ones, that he came through were kind of racy movies and that sort of thing. But I think that it worked out good. And I think that they asked him to come back for a second one, and he didn't do it.
Okay. Now, this is actually, this is not a spoiler, but let's just get into the spoiler section.
Okay.
So this is your final warning. We're going to start talking about spoilers. So if you don't want to be spoiled, I was going to make it, if your mission,
pause it now and watch the show. Yes.
I was going to make a joke about the line, but I fumbled it. So, all right, we're in the spoiler section. I just wanted to say, to me, and this is not related at all, other than the fact that you brought up Brian De Palma. It's crazy to me that in his IMDb, in the known for section, no Scarface there.
No.
Because to me, that's like the Brian De Palma movie.
I would assume it is as well. Yes.
Yeah, it's not listed at all.
I mean, like I said, so I know you've, got a love for Scarface and stuff. It's not one that I ever latched onto, right? That's why I said my Brian De Palma is The Untouchables.
Yeah.
But when it, I just have never, I don't know. Something about it never just struck me, and I haven't seen it very much, right?
Yeah, it's one of those movies that is like good, but I don't know if it really holds up as well as some of the other ones.
It's worth a rewatch, I'm sure.
But look, I'll watch any movie with Al Pacino, even the bad ones. Yeah. He's great. Okay, so like I mentioned, the first thing that I want to talk about is, to me, the most obvious, and I mentioned this in the no spoiler section, is that this is like the only movie that I've seen that's been labeled a spy movie that actually feels like a spy movie. Like, this movie is very muted as far as the action goes.
Right.
Until, of course, we get to the end, but like, it's the climax.
They've got to have the big action scene, and I know that I think that was maybe a little bit of a criticism of it at the time. That it was almost too actiony, I think.
Really?
Yeah, I think I remember hearing something like that.
That's crazy to me, because there was like basically, like, as I could be wrong, but for me, the only thing that I remember is explicitly like an action movie before the climax is when Tom Cruise is having the conversation with Kittridge in the restaurant, and he throws the gum at the aquarium and then runs out. And that's a scene that lasts like 3 seconds.
And that's all practical. I'm sure it's out there on YouTube. I was watching a video of them showing how he did it. That's actually Tom Cruise running out of there and stuff, and they're nervous about it. I mean, it gets into, when it's a talking point of every Mission Impossible movie is what crazy stunt is Tom Cruise doing this time, right?
Yeah, say what you will about like his acting or whatever. You got to put a lot of respect on him for doing practically all of his own stunts.
Yes.
I mean, especially in the new ones, he's hanging out of helicopters, the tallest building in the world. In the most recent one, he's literally just attached to a harness to a biplane in the air. And sorry, again, that's not the movie we're talking about here, but I just saw this, and so it's a top of mind. I saw a thing, I think it was Christopher McQuarrie who was talking at like Cannes or something. It was one of the film festivals.
Right.
Was it Cannes? Not the important detail. But Tom Cruise was the only person on the plane, except for obviously the guy flying in the green screen suit.
Right.
But so he was doing the stunt, he was acting, and he was operating the camera to make sure that like he was in frame and stuff.
Well, of course.
It's just psychotic to me. I love it.
Oh yeah. And it's a different level of movie making. They talk about, and I feel like, I don't know where the one is that they're in space and he's actually going to fly up there.
What?
I assume there's got to, I'm thinking James Bond Moonraker is remade and they're actually on the space station or something. He's got the money to do it probably.
The crazy part about that is that I was like, that's something Tom Cruise would do. I was like, when did that movie come out?
I mean, I know, like Apollo 13, they can simulate they simulated the weightlessness by being in one of those planes that dives, and makes it so that you can act like the weightlessness and stuff. But so I know you can do that, but I imagine there's a future before Tom Cruise is dead where he's shooting a movie in space. So.
Yeah. Well, I just saw an article that said he's going to be making movies until he's 100.
Well,
so I mean, I feel like we're not that far off.
He's got some weird thing going on there too. So
yeah, he's gonna
be able to make it. So
I was gonna make a joke, but now's not the time. So again, to just go back to the action movie aspect of this. Again, that's really funny that people thought it was too action-packed, especially in like the film landscape that we live in now. But to me, this movie is so strong until we get to that climactic fight. Once the helicopter shows up, I'm like, all right, what are we doing here?
It is, but it's a great set piece, and like I said, he actually paid, and this is where now I'm going back and reminding myself, yes, it was his production company. But they did all kinds of searching until they could find fans that would blow hard enough to actually blow him over when he's on top of that train. So, I mean, they had fans that would actually give the force enough. It's not Star Wars. I wonder if he could be in a Star Wars. No, anyways.
He'd be a great Jedi.
He gets flowed over, and in that when that's actual wind blowing him over that, and stuff. I mean, it's great stuff. So I mean, the climax of it is odd, I mean, you got Tom Cruise fighting an old man, John Voight, but I guess he's not. Maybe he's not that old, but he appears old. He's one of them guys who I think he's one of them guys who's looked 80 since he's been 20.
Oh yeah, perpetually aged. Well, he was born in 38.
Right.
This guy was born at the start of World War II.
He's ready to go.
That's crazy.
But when it comes down to it, I suppose how you're going to have a fight scene between the guys, but I don't know.
Sure.
I thought it definitely was a thing that where you had to have a big climax, and they ran with it, and it was interesting. So.
Yeah. Well, to me, the way that you make John Voight the main villain, which I do think for as little as he's in the movie, I think he does sort of sell it towards the end when they're on the train. The way that you would do that nowadays is you would have John Voight be the guy who's piloting the helicopter,
right?
And Krieger, played by Reno, who looks really familiar for some reason, he would be the guy who's fighting Tom Cruise on the train.
He's one of them guys that's been everywhere.
Yeah.
Now, I will say, getting back to what I was talking about in pre-spoilers, that's why the main cast didn't want to come back, because Jim Phelps is the main character in the show, and they didn't want Jim Phelps to be treated as a traitor.
Oh, really? Okay,
Yes.
I didn't realize that was the same guy.
Right.
I sort of just assumed that it was going to be Ethan Hunt.
Now, my thinking is, if you want to play on that, maybe you come in with, Peter Graves coming in with a little cameo and say, "Yeah, my twin brother's a real ass," or something like that.
Yeah,
But no, this was the plan from the beginning, that Jim Phelps was going to be the guy, and of course that's one of those "oh no way" kind of things, right? That he's the mole, but they didn't. The original cast was really turned off, and there was one cast member who was going to come in and actually be show up for a background cameo, and even he backed out at the end. So
that's interesting. I didn't realize he was the main character of the show. That changes like my whole perspective of the film. That would be like if in like the J.J. Abrams reboot of Star Trek, Leonard Nimoy had been the bad guy.
Right.
Who's also in Mission Impossible.
Or, Luke Skywalker throws his lightsaber. Oh, wait.
Oh, yeah. In what world would that happen?
Yeah.
That's really fascinating. Now I can't really think of anything else.
But yeah, so I mean, and I will say that also, I'm sure one reason they didn't like it is they were the team that was going to get killed off.
Sure.
And then Tom Cruise was going to be the only one left. So it's going to be the same thing, right? It was going to be the show team that gets in this trap and then gets killed off, and they didn't like that idea at all.
Right.
Of course,
so to shift to some of the other cast members,
speaking of getting killed off.
No, this guy actually lives for another almost 30 years. I was glad to see Ving Rhames in this movie. I didn't realize he was there from the very beginning. I was a little sad that we didn't see Simon Pegg, but that's okay.
No, he didn't. He was a later addition, but he's definitely become kind of a heart of the show too.
Yeah.
Right?
But Ving Rhames, again, for as little as we see him, and he does not do really anything at all in this movie, he does a pretty good job.
Oh yeah,
I really enjoy him.
Well, and he was picked. He was cast because they wanted somebody who did not look like a computer hacker, right? And he doesn't. He's a big burly "we have the meats" guy.
Yeah, got a goatee and all.
Right, and it works in that way, and it's kind of fun. I mean, even though I think his main job was just to hack a fire alarm from a fire truck.
Yeah, to sit in the chair and be like toast.
And then in the future, he keeps coming back. I think you've seen the second one already. We'll talk about that. He keeps coming back as a recurring character, which is great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean he's really good in this, and I did enjoy, or rather, I didn't enjoy John Reno as Krieger. He was the guy throughout the whole thing where I was like, he's obviously evil. He's just got that. He just has that kind of look in this movie, and especially in the scene. Which now that I think about it was probably on purpose. Sorry, I didn't even register that. But when they are in the air vents, when they're going through the it's the midpoint of the movie. It's the where they're stealing the knock list, right? And they're in the vents, and Tom Cruise gets pulled all the way up, and Krieger, comes forward and he's got his knife in hand,
right?
And then he drops it down the vent. I didn't think about it beforehand, but that was probably on purpose.
Right. I think, I don't know at that point if he's actually going to go after Tom, or something, and leave him there as evident, or, or something
like a frame job.
Right. Or something like that. But of course he grabs the disc, the fancy eye disc or whatever.
The fake disc.
Yes.
Which, I mean, props to Ethan Hunt for being a good spy and planning beforehand. There's a mole here.
Yes.
I need to have a duplicate just in case something's going on.
Well, and that's the great thing about this movie. We can get to the end where when you're watching it, and certainly on a rewatch, you notice, right? You notice that the screen that Jim Phelps has got, you notice the hand is pointed back towards him.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And that sort of thing. And maybe the first time you watch it, you don't necessarily notice that. I always thought it looked a little awkward. And then you realize why, right? You notice that, and I think that the whole point, and it's kind of, I like the writing of it or the story of it, that Ethan pretty much knows it's him the whole time. Really, as soon as he shows up,
once he comes back,
he kind of knows, oh, this is the guy, and it all comes down to his wife, right?
Well, and the conversation that him and Jim have is really well written, I think, where Ethan is like, he realizes that Jim's the mole, and so he's like feeding him lines. He's like, why would somebody do this? In the way that John Voight plays it back, and we've got the cuts of seeing the things that happened in the very beginning. I think that scene is really, really well done.
Right, and it's Kittridge did this, and what would Kittridge do, and and stuff, and it comes down to he's really just interrogating himself, and that's the best part. I do like the way they're intercutting that with the scenes, because it is him thinking through whether it's the wife or not, blowing up the car, and stuff.
And I like the idea of the fact that he realizes that Jim's the bad guy, but he has to play it off that he doesn't know yet. And so he's blaming Kittridge. And I do think Tom Cruise does a decent job of juggling those two things of okay, how would this guy react if he just found out one of his, I don't know, old friends, I guess.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I think we're supposed to believe the mentor or team, definitely a longtime team leader or something.
Definitely, yeah, because they're ribbing each other right in the beginning. Right. Well, I mean, Jim Phelps is just sort of taking it, but,
right?
But Ethan's ribbing him. Yeah, there's definitely a level of camaraderie there, and I think it is well done. There's another scene that I want to talk about. Well, we mentioned it a little earlier with in the restaurant with the gum in the aquarium.
Right.
Now, I both enjoy this scene because I think it's very well done, and I also hate it because it's so 90s.
Right.
But when Ethan Hunt realizes that Kittridge thinks that he is the mole, right? So the camera shifts and Dutch angles aplenty.
Right.
Everything's a Dutch angle, which I hate. I love noir films, but I hate a Dutch angle.
Well, they're making you think.
I hate it so much. But the camera position is really interesting to me because it's looking up at both of the guys, right, in this conversation. But when you're looking at Ethan, it's a little bit more head on. It's ever so slightly higher. And when you're looking at Kittridge, it's down lower, so you feel like he is evil,
right?
Even though in the end, he's just a guy doing his job in this case.
Right.
I think it's well shot, and the delivery or the actual dialogue between the two of them is really interesting. Now, I had seen that scene before, not because I'd seen the movie or anything, but this is more inside baseball. When I worked at Untuckit, my manager loved these movies.
Yeah.
And I don't know how we got on this conversation, but I told him that I'd never seen any of them. And he was like, come with me. We have to go in the back room right now. And he showed me this scene. And I was like, I hate the way this looks. And I was like, this is not making me want to watch the movie. But he was so excited about it. And then looking back on it now, knowing the context, it is a good scene.
It works. And again, you've got the interplay there of the other scenes, and it's like you're putting it together with Ethan, the woman behind, and then it focuses on a waitress, right? So that he's picking all that stuff up, which is great.
Yeah, he's like the other team,
right?
And Kittridge is like, what do you mean?
Yeah,
yeah. No, I think it's really well done.
All right, so yeah, and obviously in the. We're at when we're at the aquarium restaurant, which I don't know if it's real or not. I don't know, or if it's just built for this, but that's a great place. When we talk about that, that's right after the team gets killed off. And I want to point out, the team, because we couldn't get the original team, we still got named actors. I mean, obviously one of them's Emilio Estevez, right? Charlie Sheen's brother.
Yeah.
Who is, in the elevator and then just summarily stabbed, which I don't know if elevators really have that security system.
I don't know, but it was a cool scene.
Yes.
It was shocking. I was like, in the 90s, we're gonna see this much of his death.
I know, and it was pretty interesting there. And you know the team has been around together because they're kind of playing off each other, and of course it's Emilio Estevez, so he's got that kind of roguish attitude already.
Oh yeah.
But it's just kind of fun, and you never expect that he's the one, that we're losing these people. And I think that that's a good way to play that off. Again, because we didn't get the original cast back, you've got to give the audience something that they connect with, then kill them all off. Right?
Yeah. The script is well written in such a way that you do feel like, okay, this is going to be the team moving forward.
Right.
And so that's why in the beginning I was like, I don't know any of these people. I assumed there was going to be some people that carried all the way through.
Right.
And then obviously I learned why. But no, I think that they are interesting. I liked Jack. I was sad to see him go.
Yes.
Especially the way that he was getting dumped on by Tom Cruise, disguised as whoever.
Right.
I don't know,
he never gets to wear the suit or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And he's at the he's talking about
elevator.
the guy. We got this guy, Jack, wwho's a terrible employee. Yeah.
I'm going to tie him up on my horse or whatever. Yeah. I thought that was really good. And I think they all, sold that they were on this mission and made you believe that, like I said, this was the mission. This is
Right.
the start of the movie, and we're going to be with everybody forever.
And it's a good conceit or a good concession with the IMF Force, the Impossible Mission Force, which is
Dumb name.
completely realistic. That, and it's fun. We didn't even talk about the iconic scene at the beginning where Jim Phelps gets his thing, and this message will self-destruct, and stuff.
Yes.
That obviously was in the show all the time. But I do like that, we've picked your team from your usual people, and stuff, but it's still interesting to think of the fact that you've got this, and we see it a lot more in later movies, but there is this team of people or that you can pick and choose the members you need based off the thing, right? But it's still obvious that these guys have worked together before, or something like that, or at least there's enough of a history there that you get a little bit of a team aspect before they get killed off.
There's some rapport. Now that I realize that that's the same character, obviously different actor, but same character from the show, it makes a lot more sense why we first see that with him.
Right.
Because me going into it in a post, Mission Impossible movie franchise world, I was like, this is one of the most iconic aspects of the movie. Why are we not seeing Tom Cruise here?
Right.
Because nobody knew. we didn't know he was the main guy.
Right. And that's the thing is he's the team leader. He's the guy who gets the mission briefs, and stuff. And you can imagine that I believe the conceit is that, like I said, when they say we picked your team, and you get to pick somebody or something like that. And maybe that's in later movies. They'll tell Ethan, you've got your regular people and then you can grab somebody else, and that kind of thing. So you can kind of pull your team together. And I assume that each one of them are getting those fun little self-destruct messages and stuff, which get more and more fun as the movies go on.
Oh, yeah. I've got a lot of thoughts when we get the scene in the second movie. I've got lots of thoughts.
Lots there. But so it's definitely, like I said, it was the iconic thing from the show, other than the theme song. Theme song's always iconic.
Oh yeah, I mean the theme song, like you mentioned, it's one of those things that's what's the word, percolated throughout pop culture. That like even though I hadn't seen any of the movies before Ghost Protocol, I knew the theme.
Yeah,
like you know the music.
Yeah.
You mentioning the beginning reminded me of the first time where we see Ethan. And we've got this, sort of weird moment where we're spying on this guy who has just allegedly, somehow, I would imagine she was playing like a prostitute.
I think that's
sort.
What we're supposed to believe. Yeah, and he killed her. Yeah.
Yes, and then this Russian guy walks in and is like, "But tell me the intel, buddy. I gotta help you, And then they do the whole thing, and then they reveal that it's a set. They move back all the walls. Tom Cruise comes into the Russian man, I spoiled it. The Russian man comes into the other room and removes the mask. I was so surprised at how good that looked.
Yes.
I came into this thinking, okay, it's 1996. There's no way that this is going to look good. And I was shocked.
Well, and from what you hear, and he does it again at the end, of course, with the John Voight mask.
John Voight.
But there actually is a lot more of that is practical than you think.
Really?
I'm awful confident there's some digital edits in there.
Sure.
But they had a makeup guy who was pretty good at doing that and putting those masks on to the point where he's yanking it, it still looks pretty good before he pulls it off and stuff. So.
Well, and that's another one of those things that is like, I'm sure it's used in other places too, but that's such an iconic Mission Impossible thing. I mean, before the new movie, I think it was before the new one had been released in theaters, I was just scrolling through Instagram and I saw like 5 or 6 different videos that were all like compilations of all of the mask reveals in the Mission Impossible movies.
Well, now you're spoiled for all the movies.
Whatever. I don't really care that much.
I do have to say in the second one, and I just finished it last night for a rewatch. There is a good play on that, and stuff. And we'll get to it in a second.
All right. I'm excited for that. The only movie in this franchise that I'm actually like excited to see again or to see for the first time is the third one.
Right.
Because I've heard Philip Seymour Hoffman's great. I've heard that the movie itself is pretty good. So that much I'm excited for. And then I am a little bit excited to see Ghost Protocol again because I don't remember anything about it, of course, other than the skyscraper scene.
Right.
But that's one of those movies that I almost feel like Ghost Protocol is more like popular with the audience than almost any other Mission Impossible movie.
Right.
Because there was a joke about it in How I Met Your Mother where I think Ted describes something as redonkulous. And Robin says, the only other time I've heard you use the word redonkulous is to describe Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol. And Ted goes, it's when, not important. But he's like, this girl's body is the Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol of bodies. So I'm really excited to see if that one
we got to
holds
go
up.
back and see how it compares.
Man. This movie, I was so surprised. I really came into this expecting to be like, all right, it's going to be a fun action movie.
Right.
La-di-da-di-da.
It's going to be a 90s version of what we have now.
Yeah, but I was really, really pleasantly surprised. I can't believe, we sort of danced around it and mentioned it in some other things, but we didn't even actually talk about the heist scene.
Oh, yeah.
The heist scene.
The iconic scene, yes. And, of course, this is, like I said, this is the one that kicks it all off and requires that they do it now in every movie.
Yes.
Where he's got to do some form of acrobatics. It's great because, we talk about, and when he's hanging over that thing and the... I know I'm awful confident that the explainer portion of it has been done probably before, too. But the way they do it is great, where they were talking about how they're getting in and the way,
the security system.
And then we're not going to do that. We're going to do this, just that is an iconic version of this. It is, like I said, shown up in all kinds of other movies as well. But I just like the way that they do that. They lay it all out and then they go in and they start running it. And it's a lot of fun. And of course, one of the main reasons we wanted to do this is because the dude Donlow comes back. Spoiler alert for the movie. I guess I should have announced that. But so it is kind of a full circle there, and stuff. And I remember when we came out of the theater telling you that he was in the first one. It's like, oh, okay, there you go. So.
Yeah, that's a moment where I was like, this movie was good. I feel like it would have been infinitely better if I'd watched all of the other movies.
But the whole thing with the dangling and stuff, it's great because Tom Cruise, of course, he's on the wire, obviously. When you can tell. And that's why he likes to do it, because he likes the close-up shots of him doing this stuff. But
sure.
There's all kinds of anecdotes out there about him talking to the stunt guys, because when he was doing it, he kept hitting his head on the floor.
Oh, no.
So they had to put a bunch of coins in his shoes to counterbalance him and stuff. It's kind of fun to think about stuff like that to get it working. But
that's really funny. I would have loved to see that blooper.
Yes, there's got to be evidence of that somewhere.
Yeah. That scene does such an incredible job of building tension.
Oh yeah.
It does. It's so good. And the best part is it's just like, it's completely silent. There's like, if anybody speaks, it's in whispers.
Right.
It is so good.
Yeah, because you feel that whole sound detector countermeasure the whole time because they play it that way.
Oh yeah.
And then as soon as they get out, it hits the music.
Yeah. Yeah, it was very well edited. I mean, the sound design is really, really good. That scene, that was the part where I was like kind of sold on the movie.
Mm-hmm.
I got to this point and I was like, this is a really smart choice to just play it out like this.
Right.
And just know that the performances and the story and stuff is enough to keep people interested.
Mm-hmm.
I think it did really, really good.
Well, and that's one thing that they said is that when they're making these movies, most of the time, even this first one, they have action scenes and heist scenes planned, and then they write the movie around it. Is what I've heard. A lot of this is, yes, we know that we want to do this. This is a great idea. Let's do this. Now, how do we write a story around why he has to do that? Why does he have to hang into a safe room or something like that? So it is kind of a telling thing on these Mission Impossible movies that they all have that, because that's kind of what they're built around. They're built around those scenes. And then they build the story out around it. And sometimes you can tell that. Sometimes the stories feel a little wonky,
sure,
or a little forced. But yeah, it always works out. It feels like.
Yeah, at least in this case, for sure.
Yes.
For sure. One other thing that I wanted, another positive that I wanted to put on this movie is it's so well written, insofar as they show you everything, like from the very beginning. Like they have little asides of things that you think don't matter or just add flavor to the characters, and then they're gonna come back later. Like the thing with John Voight, when they're doing the very first mission briefing, he's like, where were you staying this time? And he says the Drake Hotel.
Right.
And then obviously that comes back later with the Bible.
And them damn Gideons, they stamped it.
Yes. It's so good. There's so many different parts that are like that. I mean, I can't think of any off the top of my head, to be honest with you.
And even like you say, it's a movie in that sense that appreciates a rewatch, right?
Yes.
Because you go back and see it, and you see the people in the background that he see, the second team in the background. You see them a little bit more when you're rewatching and that kind of thing, and you kind of get where they're making it all come together, right? I think they do a good job of that.
Well, it's a movie with good twists and turns and some exciting moments. And this is a comparison that is probably going to mean nothing to you. But it's the same way that I describe like Attack on Titan. Like there are so many twists and turns throughout that. It's a series, so
right.
It's much more prolongated.
Yes,
is that the right word?
It's a word now.
When I said it, it sounded wrong. There are so many twists and turns, but it's like you said, when you rewatch it, when you go back and revisit it, everything's so obvious. How did I miss this beforehand? It's very well done, and it's another reason that to me this movie is one of the few that I've seen that actually does feel like a spy movie.
Right. It definitely is. And again, and I know I keep harping on this one. I think we've said it a few times, and I brought it up in and out of videos, but something to catch sometime. There's a Robert Redford movie called Spy Game, and it's a very similar thing to that, right? It has things that pay off, and it's a great way to feel a spy movie in 2001. So I mean, you weren't quite born yet, so we'll call that.
Even in 2001, Robert Redford looks kind of old.
Well, he's got that old guy look.
30. He's older than John Voight.
Well, he's holding up better than John. Well, I don't know.
Let's see what he looks like now. Well, he looked really good in
Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid.
I was going to say Winter Soldier.
Oh, okay.
I'm too old, or too young, rather.
It's definitely. But when we talk spy movies, and when we talk Winter Soldier, we talk that kind of thing. How they do that kind of thing well. Now, Winter Soldier is more of an action spy movie.
Sure. Like the later Mission Impossible.
Right, definitely. And this is, I like the way that this one plays out in that it's the spy story, like you say. But it isn't necessarily, it's got the spy elements to it. But I think that it's, I don't know, it works. I'm with you. I'm all over it. I was glad that we went to the recent one, and it made me want to go back and watch these.
That I had the same feeling. Like I said, I was really not excited to watch any of these, any of them
Right.
at all. Even though I enjoyed the 8th one, the 7th one was all right.
Yeah.
I enjoyed the 8th one. I was not excited to go back and watch them. But after seeing the first one, I'm like, all right, I'll walk down the path. You know,
Good. I
why
can't wait
not?
to talk to you next week.
I'll waste another 16 hours of my life doing this. Some of the later ones are probably more than 2 hours, aren't they?
Oh, of course they are. Why would you spend that much money on a movie less than 2 hours?
Well, funny you bring up money. This movie actually costed a lot less than I expected it to, according to IMDb. So with a grain of salt, only $80 million. That's fairly
it's
low.
early, right? I mean, again, and this is the Tom Cruise production company, and stuff. So who knows what kind of, maybe he took a pay cut just to get in there and get it done, and stuff.
Yeah,
Even though something tells me he made it on the back end, okay, but
he took some money out of the coffers of the
Right.
Church of Scientology. But I will say, it is a little surprising to me that opening weekend it only made a little more than half of its budget back.
well, I think that's what I was saying. Is I don't think it was a huge reception to start with, and I don't know, and I could be wrong on this. But some of the things I've seen kind of lead me to believe that people weren't really, to use a term from the second one, they weren't really gagging for a second one. So I think it's
Somebody clip that.
so I think that it is it's interesting that they made a second one and then it became what it did. And I attribute that to Tom Cruise, right?
Certainly.
I attribute it to him wanting to do that, obviously. But obviously it has made money. So, I mean, it's not that he's forcing it on us or anything like that. It's not his passion project. It's definitely bringing in decent.
Oh yeah, I mean it's a billion for it, $1 billion
Right.
franchise. I think I googled earlier that all of them combined had made like 1 point. I don't remember the exact number. Over $1 billion is the point.
Yeah.
And I think just in box office, and then total, the return from all the movies was up to like 5 billion or something like that, which is a crazy number.
It is.
But-
you're getting into fake money.
It's not real. Those are just numbers. So I did have one last thing that I wanted to bring up, which is not necessarily really related to any of the stuff that we've been talking about. I mentioned at the beginning, the show was written by David Koepp, Stephen Zaillian, and Robert Towne. This is a pretty good lineup of writers, and it's probably the reason I didn't realize until after I'd seen it, until I looked at the credits. But it's probably the reason that the screenplay is so strong to
Right.
me. So obviously we have David Koepp, who is a name that fans of superheroes should know. I mean, obviously
I
Spider-Man,
definitely recognize the name.
Jurassic Park, the new Incredible Mummy.
Ooh, Indiana Jones as well.
Crystal Skull, I think. I don't know about all the rest. Not any of the rest. Just
No.
Crystal Skull. Toy Soldiers, that's one of the ones you like, right? Or is that a Nicky movie?
That one I don't. So there's Toy Soldiers and there's Small Soldiers. Now Toy Soldiers is one I don't remember necessarily.
I think I was thinking of Small Soldiers.
Small Soldiers is the one where the little toys come alive.
Yeah, I do remember seeing that one.
Yeah.
Don't remember anything about it, but
It's one worth watching sometime again.
if you haven't seen it, look at the pictures. They're incredible. Some of the stills there are great. So we got David Koepp. We have Robert Towne, who did the screenplay for Chinatown, one of my favorite movies ever, obviously with Jack Nicholson.
Well, the two Jakes, isn't that a Jack Nicholson as well?
Yeah, that's the sequel.
Days of Thunder's a Tom Cruise. Yeah, so he's all over that.
Yes, and then another My Father Before Me, Greystoke, The Legend of Tarzan.
Well, there you go. That's how we know the name.
Yes, which
He's an alum.
can I be honest with you? I was actually, for some reason, I was thinking about that movie like last week, and I almost rewatched it. I was really excited for some reason.
Well, you could have a worse time in 2 hours than rewatching Greystoke and the Legend.
It was a solid movie, I'll admit. And then we have Stephen Zaillian, who is somebody who is a little lesser known, but longtime listeners may recognize the name because I talked about him a lot in a video that I did forever ago. He's the showrunner for Ripley, the Netflix original. I loved this series. It was so good. It's man, what was that movie with Jude Law?
The Talented Mr. Ripley?
Yes, it is an adaptation of that same source material. It's shot all in black and white. It feels very neo-noir with the stark contrast of the lighting. And there's lots of like little allusions to art pieces and paintings throughout the whole thing. If you haven't seen Ripley, go give it a watch. And then listen to our video from literally probably a year ago. The quality of it's probably god awful, but it was fun to talk about for sure. and he also did the screenplay for The Irishman.
Okay, so he's a Netflix dude.
Big Netflix guy, yeah. Schindler's List too.
Oh, Clear and Present Danger. There you go. That you see, one of these days we've got to get into the Jack Ryan movies too.
Oh, geez, I really don't want to do that.
Well, too bad.
There's so many of them.
That's the point of this show, is that you don't get to pick the movies. I do.
I know. I'm just at your mercy here. But yeah, so yeah, we also have Gangs of New York and American Gangster, Moneyball, which is a movie that I haven't seen, but I know a lot of people really enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
Is this? No, Brad Pitt. Okay, that's not who I thought it was. In any case, an all-star cast for writing. Cast is not the right word there. An all-star crew for
writing crew. There you go.
But yeah, tremendous. So no wonder that I really all
I was
people
going to say
that I really like.
they've got a lot of they've got your heartstrings already. So
yes, before I even knew it, this was a movie that was after my heart. Before I was a twinkle in your eye.
Before it's amazing.
They knew. And then also I closed the tab accidentally, but composed by Danny Elfman.
Yes.
Which,
Now, is this an early one by him? Because it doesn't have, I think Danny Elfman, I think of
Batman 89.
Yeah, and I think of anything doing, Beetlejuice. I think of things with what's his name? I think of that little whimsical stuff, a little bit more whimsical than this.
Mm-hmm. Well, so this would have been 7 years. Is that math right? Yeah, 7 years after Batman. I didn't even realize that it was the same theme for the
Batman
animated
was
series.
89. Yeah. So I guess, so it's definitely, it doesn't, and maybe that's just because he got, you don't want to say typecast, but he got chosen because he does that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But wasn't Danny Elfman, isn't he from Oingo Boingo, the band? Isn't that him?
What?
Is that how check that out.
How do you spell that? Oingo Boingo?
I believe it's as it sounds.
I got it. Oh, yes.
Yep,
yeah,
Danny
Elfman.
Elfman.
In 79. Wow. So the year after Superman the movie came out. I can't think of anything else that happened in 1979.
Well, there.
Is that the same year as Chinatown?
I don't know. I think your Aunt Nikki was born in 79, so she'd probably be disappointed you'd say that.
Well, sorry, Nick. Oh, it was 74.
74.
All right. Well, I was way off. But in any case, Dad, any final thoughts on the very first Mission Impossible movie?
I am looking forward to Mission Impossible 2 and 3 and on while we compare these.
You can continue. Sorry, I was just going to complain about Mission Impossible 2 for a second.
We'll save that. So we got to save that. It's all about the next one.
I will just
where
say
this where this series goes, I think.
I will just say this. This movie does feel dated, but it doesn't feel like the most 90s movie that I've ever seen. Mission Impossible 2 feels like the most 2000s movie I have ever seen. And that's all I will say for now.
Yeah, we'll get into that one. But as far as Mission Impossible goes, like you say, this is a great start to a franchise. It sets the tone for a franchise because of, and again, I don't know if that's Tom Cruise, if that's just the attitude of it. I think it really brings out Mission Impossible, right?
Yeah.
And I am kind of curious. Someday, maybe I'll pull up an old episode. I guarantee you they're not this.
Yeah.
But it would be kind of fun to watch an old one, old TV show, just to kind of see what inspired this. But just the idea of a spy organization and how this movie and future installments of this franchise kind of play with that, I really enjoy.
Mm-hmm. The old show is on Paramount.
Oh, there you go.
All 4 seasons. At least I think there are only 4.
That's Martin Landau.
There's a lot more than 4. Never mind.
I'm using Paramount for my Star Trek Deep Space Nine rewatch right now. So.
Yeah, I'm about to go down that rabbit hole, but I watched Mission Impossible 2 times instead. All right, but yeah, I think that's where we're gonna leave it. So let us know down in the comments what you guys thought of the first Mission Impossible movie. If you agree with us, or if you think that it's terrible and they shouldn't have made 7 sequels. But in any case, we want to hear your thoughts. Let's see. We will be back here on a day after my calendar loads. We will be back here on the Tuesday to discuss Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom. Shade and I reviewed that in preparation for the new...
I think you're jumping ahead a week.
Yeah, that was on purpose.
Oh, okay. Never mind.
Sorry. Inside baseball.
Somebody doesn't know how podcasting works.
So we will be, Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom. Lots of thoughts on that one. And then I will be back on Thursday to review Superman: The Dark Path, which was a fine enough book, but I don't know. It's I don't know. The writing of Joshua Williamson is good, and I'm glad we got to see a few more issues illustrated by Jamal Campbell. But to hear more, you're gonna have to tune in Thursday. So make sure that you subscribe and hit the notifications bell, and I will